Hey everybody, and welcome back to another webinar Wednesday. So what we're going to talk about today, I got the Dispo Master here, so we're going to talk a little about a Dispo today, just on this webinar Wednesday. So Randy, how's it going, my man?
It's good, brother. I don't know about master, but I'll take it for today.
So it's kind of funny. We were talking the other day about just like kind of the dispo side and things going. And it seemed like this last week, like buyers just kind of slowed down a little bit. Like they're still buying and things. The market's still hot, but it's like they just kind of slowed down a little bit. So it's like kind of that adverse of in the spring when you get that like first couple of nice days and like everybody's out, everybody wants to look at properties and all that stuff. It's kind of the you hit this time of year and it's like that those first couple cold days and like nah, I'll just stay inside. I don't want to go look at that property today and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I feel like we
exactly.
got a little bit of that going on. So, but we have, we've done some webinars this year. We talked about managing your buyers list, building a buyers list, kind of the marketing pieces behind, sending stuff out and things. What I really want to get into today with you is kind of just like, how do you manage keeping your buyers happy when you have, when they're looking for properties and they have properties? So kind of what I'd like to get into a little bit is, sending out stuff to your big buyers first, people that are your active buyers, kind of your general buyers list, do you list them? Do you do novations? Do you do listing agreements, like that kind of thing? And then, coming into like um, how to handle the situations where you're like, oh, highest and best. Like, so that's really what I want to kind of get into today. So just off me rambling off those topics, Randy, like what are some of your first thoughts and just kind of first advice when somebody is like, they have that buyer's list, they've built it, they've cultivated it, um, they've updated their criteria and stuff like that. And then you get a property in that more than one person's going to want. You're like, oh, okay, this is going to be a good property. I have multiple buyers that are going to want this property. So how do you take that? How are you going to handle that? What are you going to do, man?
Yeah, well, first, I've always preached this. As soon as, like you said, if you've built your list big enough, you should always have like a top buyers list, like personally to you. Like you don't have to tell them that they're on it. You can or can't, but you should have your personal top buyers list or VIP list, whatever you want to call it. Of really, it's up to you, but it should consist of people who are constantly buying more than one property a month or have plans on buying more than one property a month, can close fast, you've done business with before, and they do business on your terms, meaning, hey, here's a deal, and they say, I'll take it, and that's really all it needs to be. So you should have a list of, it could be as small or as big as you want. Mine's around 20, 25 people. But when I get a property like that, it immediately gets sent out to them. But then I'll let them know, like, hey, like this is a hot property. I'm going to get a lot of hits on this. I'm sending it out to you to get a first look, because I know that you close quick. We've done a lot of business before, but it's going to be sent out tomorrow to my entire buyers list. So just here's first crack at it if you want it. So it's just really about kind of setting the stage on, I've got a property that I know I can sell to a lot of people. I'm bringing it to you guys first to have first dibs. If not, tomorrow it will be out to my whole list and it's probably going to be sold. So just kind of putting that out there. But that's kind of how I'd go about that.
Yeah, and I kind of like that. A couple things in there with that is number one, I really like that kind of format of kind of sending out to that big buyers, that preferred buyers list first, and then letting them know like, hey, I'm going to send this out to my list. That creates urgency. That kind of lets them know like, hey, I'm on a timeline. I got about 24 hours to be able to do this. Also, one of the things I've seen people do, and I would be very careful of this, and I would not advise this of kind of that, because people will tell this to me as a buyer here in Indianapolis, and people are like, "Oh, you're the only person I've sent this to yet," or "You're the first person I've sent this to," and I put in an offer of like, "Oh, well, I have an offer higher than that." Like, whoa, wait a second! I thought I was the first person to see this. So don't like kind of play that game with your buyers, because it's a real good way to kind of hurt your reputation and kind of your
Yeah.
game and what you're doing. So be careful. Don't tell them like, oh, hey, you're the only person I'm sending this to. Let them know like, hey, yeah, you're on my list of about 20, 25 people, or, hey, you're on my short list, something along those lines. But,
Yeah.
you're one of the few people, or you're on the list of people that are seeing this first. Don't try to tell them like, hey, you're the only person that's seen this yet, or you're the first person I'm sending this to. If that's not the case, that's going to work for you every now and then, but you're going to get caught on a lie somewhere along the line. Just because there's going to be that time where they throw out an offer that you're not ready to accept yet, and somebody else is. So can you take that if they're the first person? Just be careful of that. But Randy brings up some really good tips of having those people that on that preferred list that you've worked with before. They have, they're credible. How they work. They know how you work. They know the process. They know the kind of the terms that are coming in. Negotiations take maybe one back and forth, if that. Kind of thing, just kind of doing that kind of stuff. So having that preferred list is a really good thing. So
yeah, and like when I add people to that list, kind of like what you're saying, they know that there's other people seeing that, but it's the fact that they know that they're on like the first look list. I don't tell them, like you said, I don't say, hey, you're the only one seeing this, because it's not true. The only time that really happens is if I'm on the phone with someone, if I'm doing like a follow-up call, and they say, hey, Randy, I really want a house in Bean Creek right now. And I'm like, hey, I just so happened, I'm looking at my sheet right now. We just got a deal today. No one else knows about it. And that's the only time where that's appropriate for me, is when I'm literally talking to someone, and as it happens, it's like, oh, well, now that you mentioned it, I do have this property coming up. I haven't really sent it out to anyone yet. The only one who knows about it. And then that's a true kind of first look, but that kind of just happens, kind of randomly.
Yeah. And talking on that too. So that's something you kind of gotta be careful of, and you want to build those relationships. You want to do those things, but when you're having that conversation of kind of the next steps, if you're going to give that like kind of first look and things like that, make sure you're setting the expectations up. So on the acquisition side, all the time we talk about setting expectations with the seller. Like, hey, if I give you this offer, I expect you to be able to say yes or no, move on from there. If you're not ready for that, if you're not ready to say yes or no, I'm not ready to give you that offer, kind of thing. Same thing on the dispo side of setting those expectations of like, hey, you're looking for a property in Bean Creek, or whatever area it is. We just got this in today. I'm going to give you, if you want first crack at it, you're the first time talking about it because we just got it. You can go, but you know what? I'm not gonna be able to hold this for you. I'm not gonna be able to hold this up. You got about 24 hours to get your guy in and out of there. And then I'm going to have to ask some other people about it, because I got to move quickly on this one. I like this property, whatever it is. Because you can't get in that trap of, okay, you're the only person same situation of like, oh, I just got one in there. You can go check it out and stuff like that. Oh, well, I can't get there today, but yeah, I really want there. Is there any way I can do it on Tuesday, or, come in, being able to drag that out. You got to be able to set the expectations like, hey, I can't do that. You can check it out on Tuesday, but I can't promise you that somebody else isn't going to want it or put an offer on it before that. So just being honest with them about that and kind of setting up those expectations. Because that's what your buyers want. They do want that. They want their ego stroked. They want that preferential treatment, but being able to put expectations on them as well, because they have expectations of you. So those are some of the important things to do. All of a sudden you're going to have that buyer too that you just love. You love doing deals with. You love working with them, and you're like, yeah, you know what? This is right up your alley. I'll give you 3 days. If that's what you want to do, it's whatever you feel comfortable with, making sure you're doing. But like I said, you kind of put those expectations out there. So
yeah, and it's kind of like handling like your VIP list.
Yeah.
Because always what I get a lot is like, hey, Randy, like, how do I see a property before you send it out? Like, well, depending on the person, you can be on my first look list. I'll send it out, every Monday evening, and it'll be like everything we've got even coming up that we've got under contract. But they're like, well, how do I get on the list before that? Like, it's like everyone I talk to, like, they want to be the first person. And I think everyone that I have on my VIP list has asked me that question at one point in time. And it's just not possible, because you can't play that game. You can't promise someone like, hey, like, you're always going to be the first one to look at this property because everyone else wants that. If I said that to everyone, then I would just be a liar. So you just kind of, the way I like to do is I'll send that VIP list out, but I know there's some properties on there in certain areas that I know certain buyers like. So after I send it out, I'll either shoot them an email or give them a call and say, hey, I just shot that new list out. There's a couple on there that I think are good for you, and these are the ones. And that's how I treat that, just so you're still like, hey, like, maybe they didn't check their email. Maybe they don't know I sent it out. Like, hey, just a heads up, I sent out that list, and there's a couple on there. It's this one on Alabama, wherever it is. I think that's a good one for you. Then that's how you kind of treat that person who wants like that extra step of first look.
Yeah. And I know people are going to disagree with that. And I'm not, I'm completely with you. We've always been on the same page with that. And really what that does is that protects the buyer.
Yeah.
So when you're put in that situation of like, hey, you want on that super secret, double probation VIP list, whatever you want to call it, like you want on that list, you're going to take it at the price that I put out there for it, and you're going to buy it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the situation. You know what happens in that situation? They're going to end up liking that property like they thought they would. There's going to be an issue that pops up of like, oh, all of a sudden the tenant, we didn't get the tenant out last week. We had the tenants are staying an extra week, or, oh, they need a longer on their escrow agreement. Or it's just like, you walk in there like, oh, it needs a little bit more work than what I thought. So it protects them. It puts them in a situation of, if you're on that list and you want that special thing, it's kind of like, hey, you got to take it at this price and you got to kind of be happy about it. So, kind of having that thing of like being able to give them time, making sure they're happy with their thing. Because once they start, they get in that situation like, oh, hey, this is what I thought, we're going to have to renegotiate. Well, okay, you said renegotiate. Now all of a sudden you're off of that super secret, VIP list and stuff. So it does protect them and stuff like that, because it's the main thing. It's one of the worst things you can do is, when you're selling properties in a dispo manager, you're sell bad property to somebody that does, that's going to kind of hold that against you, or kind of always stick that in their mind. And not that every single one of our properties is like a home run or an awesome deal. It's not the case, but they need to be happy with it in the long run and be able to get the return on it that they need from that. So that's the main thing. All right. So Randy, we're in that situation of, maybe we send it out to our VIP list, this preferred buyers list, the people that, we've worked with, they're actively searching, they're actively ready to buy. We send out to them, we give them 24 hours notice kind of thing. Now we send it out to our whole buyers list. So, whether that's through an email blast, we're putting on Facebook, we're doing some different marketing stuff with it and things like that. And then, so it's a good property. We've done our job correctly and things like that. That's when it's like super busy for you for the next hour,
Yeah.
for the next day, or however it is. So how do you handle kind of that? Number one, the pressure that kind of comes behind that, the communication that comes with it, and then just the willingness to kind of like have to like help people and like kind of want to like give them the deal and stuff like that. So what are some tips you have for that?
Yeah. So it gets a little tricky. And it's kind of like a learn as you go. I think for someone brand new, it's easy to make a mistake in this situation where they just take the first person that responds to them. They just like, okay, cool, sold. Where it's like, okay, you guys, you didn't really talk about the terms. So first, especially like on the wholesale side, or even like wholesale, what we do, it goes to our email blast first. So it's going to people who, they're literally, they'll just email you back. Their offer is, I want this. That's it. That's what the email says. So for a new wholesaler, I think it's easy for someone to say, great. And like, you think you have a sold deal where, if someone emails you back that fast, if you just send it out and somebody like, oh, I want this one, chances are there's going to be a lot of other people who also want that, because it's no one just looks at an email and says, I want this, if it's not a hot property. So, so you got to learn that first. If you get a very quick response like that, like, just calm down, like take a breather, don't respond immediately. Just like think about your next step. And just reply to that person and say, that's great. Can you just shoot me over? Like what terms are you offering? What price are you offering? Just to give them something to email you back, something in more like a more formal format. And so in that case, you can go like one of two ways. If they email you back and say, hey, like full price, I close tomorrow, it's totally up to you at that point. If you know what you have, you can then say, hey, I really appreciate this offer. This is a great offer. I have other people that are, they might want to look at this as well. I'm going to need at least 24 hours to, agree to any offer at this point. So that's one way you could do it. The other way is if you do get multiple people who like one the guy that says, I want this, or the other guy that says, I'll buy this at full price. That's when you kind of have to go back to those people and then go back to anyone else interested and say, hey, I'm already getting multiple offers on this property. I'm going to set a deadline of, tomorrow by 5 p.m. to have anyone interested, send me their offer and give me their highest and best. The way our business is, it's a little it's a little more streamlined because we do have agents on our buyers list. So like I'll get a guy who I work with maybe once or twice out of the year who says, "Hey, Randy, I want to buy this house. Send me the purchase agreement." And then I'll have an agent send me a purchase agreement from them. So they kind of have to, like, agents have to fall in line with like their rules and regulations. So you have to put an actual written multiple offer notification out to them, and just give them a deadline to have highest and best, and then go back to the people on your buyers list and say, hey, I've got multiple offers. I'm giving anyone 24 hours or tomorrow at 5, whatever you choose, to submit their highest and best. And then I'll review and get back to who I think has the best offer. So it's always going to be a tricky situation. But I think, like I said in the beginning, if you get an offer right when you send it out, don't jump on it too fast. Like, make sure you know it's a legitimate offer from someone who can close fast, and make sure the terms are laid out. Like, don't just go for the I want it email and say, okay, sold, because you could be shooting yourself in the foot there.
Yeah.
So it's really situational.
Yeah, one of my first questions I always ask when I'm in that situation is basically like, okay, have you seen the property? Have you sent your contractor through? Do you want it? Like, I want to vet them to make sure they want it, because somebody might want the property, but maybe they haven't seen it yet. So I'm always like, hey, have you seen it yet? Or you look at it? Oh no, I need to take a look at it next week. Well, that changes your offers. Your offer might not be as legit as I think. Like, say, hey, if you send an offer, like, you need to be ready to buy it. I'll still give you time to look at it. I'll still allow a walkthrough. I'll still be a contractor to walk through, but I need you to give me a price that you're ready to, that you want this property at and stuff. So when somebody hasn't seen it, they're just looking at pictures, they're just going by the address, things like that. Their offer is a little different to me than just that person that, like, oh yeah, I just walked it, I like it, I'm ready to close next week. Like that. That's a little bit different than that other person. Like, oh, I'll give you full price, but yeah, I need to look at it like later or something like that. So just kind of keep those things in mind and consider that stuff. So, Randy, how about that situation where you agree to a deal and then you get a call and say, oh, hey, I'm interested in this property. I'll give you this price for it. And you say, I'm sorry, I've already accepted an offer that. And the person says, oh, I'll just give you 5,000 more. You just take the higher deal, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you can do. This is kind of like another one of two things. So someone calls me and says, hey, I want this house. We agree to something verbally, right? And they haven't signed a purchase agreement yet. 5 minutes later, someone calls me, and they want this house. I will tell them, hey, I already have an agreement with someone. I'm sending them the purchase agreement now. We just got the phone. So I can take a backup offer. They will say, oh, I'll pay 5,000 over list price. This is where your own ethics and morals come into play. You can screw the other guy over if you want to and say, okay, cool, let me call that guy back and tell him I got a better offer. That's the thing I don't do. Yeah. that's a poster of don't be this guy. Yeah. because you're just going to grow a bad reputation. People talk, right? Yeah. And they're going to say, hey, I tried to do a deal with Randy once and we had an agreement verbally, and then he called me back and said he took a higher offer. It's not a good look on you. And in Indianapolis, a lot of people, it's a small city, a lot of people talk. So what I do is I say, hey, I gave this guy my word. We agreed on it. He's expecting my purchase agreement. I have to do this deal with him. I'm a man of my word, and I know you'd probably want me to do the same for you. I'll keep your offer as a backup in case this guy doesn't fall out. I'll give you a call first. And go from there. Now, if you already signed a purchase agreement and then someone calls you and you say, hey, I got a signed deal on this, and he's like, oh, I'll give you 5,000 more. You can't just back at it. I mean, you guys have a signed contract that will have, legal penalties if you just up and just sell to someone else and back out of your contract for no reason. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. So one's a shady situation, one's more of a legality thing. So you want to make sure that you make the right choice. But either way, if you get a deal verbally or in writing with someone, just honor it. It's gonna help you out in the long run.
Yeah, I will say 100%. No matter how long you're in this deal, or how long you're in this business, there will be deals that, like, oh man, if I would have held out more, I could have got more money. Or sure. Man, if I would have bought this property and held it myself versus wholesaling it, like I would have been a great rental. Like, there's gonna always be deals that you look back and say, man, if I would have done this, or if I could have fixed that. It's gonna happen all the time. So don't shortcut yourself on trying to just take a good deal or trying to take a better deal and going back on your word or ruining your reputation. Your reputation, if you want to do this for a business, you want to make a living out of this, your reputation is going to be a lot more important than that extra $2,000 or something like that. That you're making on a deal. So just something to keep in mind. But Randy, you brought up the best tip right there, man. Just having those backup offers. Things go south. I just got off the phone with, our acquisition guy, Ronnie. He's got about 3 wholesalers that he's been working with this week that basically their buyers backed out and they basically need their contracts about ready to run out. So they need help, basically somebody buying those deals or us partnering with those. They need help with those deals because that's in the situation. So making sure that if you're in a situation where you have multiple offers, you have to do a highest and best, you have somebody that wants to buy, over what you've already have a contract for, any of those things or agreement for, any of those things, make sure you have backup offers and make sure you keep track of those. So if something does go south, you're kind of informing those. And whenever I had those situations that I was even though I felt something a little weary, I'm going to call that person like, hey, this one is set to close next week. If it doesn't, you're going to be my first call. Are you still interested? Just even setting up those things, making sure things are going on the right track. So it's a really good way to handle that. It's also a good way to be like, to know exactly what the people are looking for next time. Like, hey, sorry, this one didn't work out. It did sell, so your backup offer is not going to be needed anymore. But this is I know now that I know this is exactly what you're looking for. I'm on the hunt for that next property for you and stuff. So those are always good conversations to have.
Yeah, and kind of on the multiple offer situation. So like if you say a couple of days go by and you're not going to have like a wave of people want a property, but you have 2 people. It's just the words you say. I've been caught in this situation. I'm not going to lie, but the words you say, like you just got to watch what you say. So if you have 2 people interested, you're talking to person A, and they say, "Okay, I'll offer you $50,000," and it's an offer you would take, right? You want to say something along the lines of, "Okay, that's a good offer. I do have someone else interested, so if that's your best offer, I have to go back to them and see what they can offer. If it's not as good as yours, I'll take it." I've been too excited at one point where I'll say,
and you're gonna be. That's not like it's gonna happen. So
yeah. But like you'll say, okay. So they're like hearing like, okay, we got a deal. Where I'm like, I got to call this other guy and explain to them what's going on, and then that person says, "Oh, I'll pay you 55." You call the other guy back and you're like, "Hey, like I talked to this other buyer. They want to offer 55." Like, "Hey, Randy, I thought we had a deal. You said we had a deal at 50." And I was like, "Oh, we blah blah blah." Well, you just want to just make it clear that first person who gave you the offer, if you know someone else wants to make an offer, tell them, say, "Hey, I got someone else who wants to make an offer. Just let me know what you can do, and I'll have to go back to them after I talk to you, see what they want or see what they can offer me. If it's not as strong as yours, I'll definitely do yours. If it's going to be higher, I'm assuming what you're telling me is the best you can do."
And people hear things differently. Like that's just kind of the nature of the business. When Randy says, okay, like they were like, okay, that could be okay. We got a deal. Right. I always like to use things like, hey, before we make this official, or before I officially, verbally agree to this, or, hey, before we, finalize this deal, using those words and stuff like that, making sure like, hey, this isn't finalized yet. This isn't official yet, but we there's just one more step, using things like that. Definitely helps out and stuff. But, one of those things too, if I'm talking about the multiple offers or going back on things, just kind of another thought that I had is like, remember, if you do agree to something, that means that you liked it. That means that was a good deal. You were happy with that deal at one point, so you can be happy with that and move on as well. So Randy, any other thing that you want to cover or go over when it comes to just kind of that, during that dispo process of having those conversations, kind of working with buyers, not necessarily cultivating relationships, but just during that time of, that negotiation and kind of working through that deal and before, from sending out a deal to when it actually is finalized?
Oh man, I mean, there's just a lot that goes in between that time frame. Just sending out a deal. It depends on, I guess it depends on like the house where someone's wholesale business is. If it's brand new, it's fresh. If it's, they're very seasoned, they've got a big list built up. I guess like for me, like sending it out goes to like that VIP list. Then immediately after goes to your email buyers list. And then after that, that's when I would start posting on, Facebook and social media. I don't post on Facebook as like my first way to get a property out, because that's going to a lot of people who aren't vetted. A lot of tire kickers are on Facebook, or people just say, hey, send me the details. It takes a lot of time to send you the details if 25 people ask for the details.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my advice there, to start with what you have as far as buyers go, and then broaden it. You can start posting it there.
Yeah. And if you don't get an offer in, 3 days or a week or whatever, repost it or resend it out. Or if you lower the price or you renegotiate or anything, send it out again. Don't just always assume that, like, oh, people will check my website. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I made when I started Dispo. I had, when I was doing Randy's job before him, I just assumed, like, oh, we're Simple Wholesaling. A lot of people know who we are and stuff like that. People just go to our website and just ask me when they want to. No, it's not that simple, and it's not that easy. Like, you need to send people your properties. You need to update them on, hey, prices or any changes or anything like that. So making sure they're informed and making sure that you're putting the properties in front of them to make the best decision they can is super important. So, all right, man, good stuff. Any last little tips? Any last little updates or anything?
I'd say on the disposition side, it doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's a very, you got to be very careful. I mean, it's a fun position to be in, like when you're selling properties, but it does take, some good, ethical decision making, and, someone who's just going to be honest, because that's where you can just find yourself in a lot of trouble. And you just don't want to do that. So just like I said before, like before you make any decision, like don't get too excited, like breathe a couple times before you say something, before you send that email back and say, okay, what's the best way to respond to this where it's going to be, ethically right or something like that. So that's it.
So, and you got to be organized. That's one of the biggest things that comes into the Dispo side as well. Be organized on that. That's a webinar that we're going to have down the road on just organization from the Dispo side. But with that, thank you so much. Let us know if we can help you out at all. If you have any questions or anything like that, don't hesitate to reach out to Randy at simplewholesaling.com or me, Brian, at simplewholesaling.com. And we'd be more than happy to answer your questions, help you out in any way, or give some topics you want us to hit up on webinars in the future. So thanks a lot, guys. Take care.